friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to the channel. It's been a little while. Figured I needed a recharge and then come back into 2022 pretty strong. So what I'm going to do is look back at 2021 for one last time. That's right. I'm going to dole out some report cards to all your favorite wrestling promotions. Assuming your favorite wrestling promotions are the bigger ones here in the United States and New Japan. So we're going to hop into this. We're going to kick things off with WWE. And before I get started, give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We are over 29,000 subs. Let's try to get to 30,000 by I don't know, February 22nd or something. Anyways, let's go ahead and dive into this. First up, the biggest company on the planet in terms of professional wrestling. They might not like to call it professional wrestling, but I still call it pro wrestling. I'm talking about, of course, WWE. Sports entertainment at its finest. Let's talk about what WWE did this year. They completely gutted the best thing they had, NXT, and they turned it into NXT 2.0. I'm still not even sure what NXT 2.0 is supposed to be. I guess we're just supposed to sit around and watch a bunch of wrestlers learn how to wrestle. And sometimes it gets kind of ugly, but it's not without its charm. They did that. Number two, they creatively sank their flagship show, Monday Night Raw. And so now people kind of think of Raw as the B show compared to SmackDown, where the tribal chief is. Oftentimes during 2021, Monday Night Raw was damn near unwatchable. It's been a little bit better lately, but there was a stretch there where, it stank. Something fierce. So much so that me and Larson over at Going In Raw decided to stop reviewing it on Monday nights and started reviewing it on Tuesday afternoons in order to maintain our sanity. In sadder news, they released around, 80 or so wrestlers during a pandemic, and then they cited budget cuts, and at the same time, they were telling anybody who would listen about how much money they were making, all these record profits, and yet they're just releasing all sorts of people. They continually missed the mark on a lot of these wrestlers, like Keith Lee, all those Adam Cole pitches we heard about, but he claims he never heard. Aleister Black, Bray Wyatt, and those wrestlers ended up either leaving or being released. They would shoehorn cheesy ad integrations like zombies into Backlash or that golden egg into Survivor Series to make some more of that sweet, sweet money. Those are, I think, sort of the low points for WWE. That's what I mark them down for. But what I mark them up for, they're positives. And yeah, I'm reading from this thing down here. Don't pay no mind when my eyes go down here. Positives. They actually did give us quite a bit of what we like this year. Big E as WWE champion. A really cool, dominant Bobby Lashley run. RK Bro was a lot of fun. King Woods winning King of the Ring. They continued a decently compelling storyline with heel Roman Reigns and gave us a really cool face Brock Lesnar. His stuff with Sami Zayn was a lot of fun. Of course, they brought fans back to their shows. Sometimes those shows are not hugely populated with fans, but they can go there if they want to. SummerSlam, of course, was a big tentpole event. That was a big show. WrestleMania was actually kind of a lot of fun this year, especially night one of WrestleMania. That was really cool. Bianca Belair, speaking of night one of WrestleMania, had a really great moment in the main event against Sasha Banks, where she won the WWE SmackDown Women's Championship. That was a big major moment, and the culmination of a great story for her where she won the Royal Rumble. And then at SummerSlam, that moment was sort of taken away by Becky Lynch, who beat her in 26 seconds and turned heel. I'm still not entirely sure people really want Becky Lynch to be heel, but I get what they're doing this year at WrestleMania. Bianca will probably get that win back. She'll beat Becky Lynch, and I imagine they'll probably make Becky Lynch a good guy again after that. Maybe they'll split them up from the brands there. NXT UK is a major bright spot under the WWE umbrella. I'm not sure if Vince McMahon even knows that the NXT UK exists, but NXT UK is pretty great. I highly recommend it. They always have terrific wrestling, effective storylines, really wonderful feuds, excellent use of their women's division, their tag division, their mid-card, and they all do it in the span of an hour every week. NXT UK is actually really cool. I can't wait till they bring back a full pack crowd there and they bring back their takeovers. I hope they do that because it is a ton of fun. Hopefully NXT UK sticks around this year hopefully. What does WWE need to do? The biggest thing WWE suffered from this year, the biggest knock on their grade, was their lack of consistency and the reliance on redundancy. Way too many recaps, way too many rematches. Championship contender matches are ridiculous. They need more logical storytelling. They need to plan out their stories. I feel like right now about 20 to 25% of their stories are actually planned out in advance. The rest are just sort of writing as they go along, which is probably what Vince McMahon has relied on for years, but it's just not working anymore. And it often leads to just redundancy, aimless storytelling, and then channel changing corniness like Happy Corbin segments. These things are unwatchable and they make me cringe whenever I see them. Less talking, more planned out stories, and they could really, they have the ingredients there. They have the ingredients there. It's just that Vince and Bruce, they just make it up as they go along, seemingly. That's what it comes off as. They can have such great stuff every single week. They can make the most use of all those hours of TV that they have. Creatively, they need to get their shit together. NXT 2.0 needs a ton of changes for them to make it must see, you know? Like, at least Raw and SmackDown, you tune in, what's going on here? This is where the big stuff, this is where the big boys play. Look at the adjective. NXT at this point is like, why am I even watching this? I gave WWE a C-. There's just too much that they need to do. Their business practices can be awfully shady. They could be the end-all be-all in wrestling and everybody would love them and there would be no need for an AEW. Competition is good because it lets wrestlers get paid more. So I'm definitely glad AEW is around, and AEW does some really good stuff. We're going to talk about them in a second. But WWE really could have the cake and eat it too. Everybody could love it. They still do a lot of really good stuff, but I can't help but to give them more than a C-. Hopefully, I mean, there was an entire stretch when Monday Night Raw was just so bad. It was almost unwatchable. Hopefully in 2022, they turn that around and they become the company that we all remembered from whenever they were good. Let's move on. AEW. If this was 2 days ago, I probably would have given AEW a solid B. I think there are a couple things they need to sort out, but they gave us so many cool moments in the year 2021. The return of CM Punk, the debut in the company of Bryan Danielson, All Out, Adam Cole, Kenny Omega as champion. So many match of the year contenders. So much cool stuff. Just a lot of really cool stuff. And then Tony Khan decided to tweet on the last day of the year. You know how like in school sometimes you'll have like one last assignment that's worth a ton of points and it matters a lot to your grade? Well, Tony Khan had that assignment in hand and he completely tanked it. And so their grade went down because of that. So I already mentioned the stuff that they did good. AEW, generally speaking, understands that professional wrestling, you got to stick with what works. And that's the professional wrestling. That's the in-ring action. They do that so well. They do that really well. They let their wrestlers wrestle. They let their wrestlers speak, and they don't micromanage stuff. But sometimes a little bit of management goes a long way. Now we're going to talk about the Tony Khan stuff. All right. So Tony Khan has basically taken it upon himself to become the one-man public relations of AEW, right? He's the guy at the media scrums answering the questions. On press conference calls, he's there answering the questions. On Twitter, he's quite vocal. He is quite the promoter. I've praised him for that. However, it does seem like the man has a hard time taking criticism. Now, understandably, he is at the focal point of the AEW/WWE, whatever that is, war of fans, tribalism, whatever. However, he fucked up pretty big yesterday. So here's the backstory. I'm going to try to truncate this as much as I can because we're already at 10 minutes here. In an interview with Fightful, Big Swole, recently gone from AEW, laid out three reasons why she left AEW. Number one, lack of opportunities for women's wrestling on TV. And that I would knock them down for as well. They have a terrific women's division. I think there are things that have been on Dynamite and Rampage that could be gone from their programming that could be used to better further feuds with women and lead to more matches, women's wrestling on TV. Now, what they do with their actual women when they're on TV is actually pretty damn good, which makes it confusing why they don't do more of that, because what they do is actually pretty damn good. So, lack of opportunities for women's wrestling on TV. Number 2, lack of creative structure. Now, this is evident in their programming. They don't have writers. They just sort of tell their wrestlers to go out there and do their stuff. Tony Khan has said about 60% of their stuff is pre-planned, but one thing that AEW does lack are proper story beats. Hangman Page's ascendance to world champion, I feel, my personal opinion, could have been executed more properly with better storytelling in terms of plot points. Essentially, they rely too heavily on just have match, lose match, come back, win match again, now you're champion. The moment itself, I think, was done a disservice, his win at Full Gear. It was a great match, and I just feel like there should have been, like when Kenny won the title, took it to Impact, there was a bunch of really great story moments, and I feel like maybe that's because it was handled by Don Callis, who over at Impact does stories really, really well. That's my speculation. Hangman's ascendance really just relied on, he was hanging out with the Dark Order, he offered up a match, they lost that match, he went away, had a kid, came back, won that multi-man match to get the title shot at Full Gear, and then he won that match because he had a kid. It was too basic. It was almost too sparing in story plot details. Sometimes in wrestling, you want the soap opera aspect of it to be involved. You might disagree, and that's totally fine. That's just how I feel from a fan standpoint. It feels like it devalues those moments just a little bit. Big Swole seemed to indicate that it is kind of the case backstage. Wrestlers oftentimes are simply wrestlers. They're not there to be writers. They need to have the stories in place for them. And she says that doesn't happen. Her third point was the biggest one. That was the thing that sort of blew up. And that is, she believes, and I agree with this, that there's not enough representation. There's not enough diversity in AEW. You can point to individual moments of diversity. You can point to individual moments of, wrestlers of color having their moments on TV. However, which of those wrestlers are continually in main event scenes, continually vying for gold? That doesn't really happen a whole lot in AEW. Her bigger point actually has to do with representation behind the scenes. She says there's no cultural representation at AEW backstage for black wrestlers, explaining what works and doesn't work culturally. Her actual quote is this, and I'm reading this here. There is no one else who can explain our culture and experience except for us. She pointed out that her daughter doesn't watch AEW because there's no representation on a consistent basis for her. She does watch WWE because you have Bianca Belair, you have Big E, you have Lashley, et cetera, et cetera. WWE has gotten better at that. I was hoping that AEW would recognize this as an issue, and given that there are plenty of people of color in the current free agent wrestler market, or at least people whose 90-day no-compete are coming up, Shane Strickland, Keith Lee, to name just two, that they would recognize this and make some appropriate moves. They would look in the mirror. Well, apparently I'm a clown because Tony Khan tweeted out after this interview a bunch of individual instances of diversity on his roster and on television. And then he said, Big Swole didn't quit. I let her contract expire because I'm not a fan of her wrestling. Whoa! That's not good. You can't say that. Because number one, Tony Khan has said several times in the past that he actually admires Big Swole for her wrestling. He actually used her wrestling to help get Britt Baker, one of their biggest stars, over and to the world title scene, the women's world title scene. So it just came off as petty, defensive. Even if it's something he believed, you should step back and ask yourself, is this something I should say? Or should I be more diplomatic as the face of my company, as somebody who relies on the goodwill of their fan base? Should you step back and say, I don't disagree with this stuff. We're always looking to improve. I feel like we have made good steps. I'm excited for additional steps to be made in the future. It's just a bad look for you to tweet something like this, for you to attack a person of color on Twitter when you're the head of a prominent wrestling company. It's a bad look. Now, I find it difficult to put myself in the shoes of the son of a billionaire. Honestly, my personal opinion is they're just cut from a different cloth and they don't understand how to accept constructive criticism. He can have his defenders and you can step up and say, oh no, Tony's great. You can defend him, but he ain't gonna love you for it, man. He's there to make money, and he's there because he saw a niche that was open in professional wrestling that he could then fill and make some money off that. If you're gonna be the face of a company, if you're gonna be out there, if you're gonna be the public relations guy, you need to be able to handle criticism. You know who else who doesn't handle criticism very well? Vince McMahon, and we all shit on him for it. So, for that, I gave AEW a C+. I think they gave us a lot of great moments throughout the year. There are some glaring issues with the company that need to be addressed. I was hoping they would address them, but it looks like there are no plans to do that. Therefore, I can't give them anything better than a C+. Let's move on real quick. Oh, there is also other stuff AEW had. The Dan Lambert stuff is absolutely terrible. That's channel-changing cringiness, no better than Happy Corbin. The Forbidden Door was exciting, but kind of underwhelming because travel restrictions, and all they could really do anything with was Impact. They did some stuff with New Japan, but I think travel restrictions really hurt that. Hopefully they go back to that. One thing they could actually use more of is redundancy. They could do rematches. Kingston versus Punk was a great match at All Out with a great 3-week build. They could have done a lot more of that, and those are fairly minor issues. The bigger one is what Big Swole was talking about. More women on TV, more structure to their creative, and more diversity in their company. Let's move on to Impact. I gave Impact a B-. I think Impact has actually quite a lot of diversity in their roster. They use their women better than anybody in the country on TV. I feel like they need to learn how to build buzz with their own roster. They relied on the Forbidden Door to build their buzz, Kenny Omega and Christian. Unfortunately, once the Forbidden Door was closed, Impact became kind of an afterthought. It also didn't help that they removed their programming from Twitch, where so many awesome Twitch streamers like Going in Raw and plenty of others were co-streaming their programming, getting the word out about how good their programming really is, because Impact is pretty damn good. It's 2 hours a week. They fit a lot into it. They have a wide gamut of variety. They've got the comedy stuff. They've got some excellent serious stuff. They've got really innovative wrestling. They have their own door that's open to other companies. Impact is doing everything really, really good. I'd love to see Impact's creative team handle some of AEW's creative. I think that'd be kind of great, but I don't think that's going to happen. Impact gave them a B-. I think they need to figure out how to build buzz off their own in-house wrestlers. Let's move over to GCW. I gave them an A- because holy crap, I barely knew anything about GCW before this year. And then they came out of nowhere. They had Mox as champion. Nick Gage showed up in AEW. They had the amazing Matt Cardona stuff in GCW this year, which was absolutely off the charts great. I think GCW, they're going to be running the Hammerstein soon. I gave them an A-. I'd like to see more women's wrestling, and I'd like to see them step up their production value a little bit. I feel like they need to either use better cameras, better lights, or real production. I don't know what they need to do, but their stuff sometimes looks like dog shit, and they need to fix that. Maybe they think that's their appeal because ECW is able to get by looking like dog shit back in the day. And then finally, New Japan. I'm going to give New Japan a C because I feel like they made some questionable decisions, changing their world title, getting rid of their Intercontinental Championship. But then I think that they're making corrections to that, like probably bringing back the other title that Okada's been carrying, and they're probably going to make Okada their top champion and get a Wrestle Kingdom, so they're going to have a bit of a reset. I thought New Japan Strong was able to build quite a bit of word of mouth, and I'd like to see that continue as well. I think that they had several wrestlers step up this year. You had Sho and Yo step up. You had Jeff Cobb be elevated quite a bit. And you had Zack Sabre Jr. have a killer G1. So hopefully those are names we'll see more of in 2022. And I kind of feel like they were also hit hard with the restrictions with COVID, et cetera, et cetera. So that's not easy ground to navigate. I gave them a solid C. I think that they're going to have a better grade this year in 2022, though. I think they're going to get back to basics and have a pretty good year. So we'll see how all that works out. That was a lot to talk about. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's get this WrestleJuice channel going strong in 2022. Hey, I give myself an A, by the way, for WrestleJuice in 2021 because it started existing. What is this? What did I get? A pizza cutter on the forehead? What is this? Go check out one of these other videos. I'm going to investigate this a little bit more.